we have a podcast.
Diving deep into all things Texans, both on and off the field. Here's Sean Pendergast and Pro Football Hall of Famer, the General, John McClain. Welcome to Houtopia.
Hey everyone, welcome in. It is the Houtopia Football Podcast. It's a Thursday edition leading into Week 10 of the NFL season. It is here. The Cincinnati Bengals will be hosting the Houston Texans, who are looking to go over 500 for the first time in God knows how long this deep into the season, 2019, I'm guessing. So this is exciting. This is really exciting, but there's a lot to get into. Some of it not so exciting as I hold the injury report in my hand right here. We'll get into that. I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast, on Sports Radio 610, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on weekdays, joined as always by my good friend, the Hall of Famer, and our senior columnist at sportsradio610.com, the great John McClain. John, happy Thursday morning. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's a great time to be a sports fan, talk show host, podcaster in Houston because the Texans are 4-4, shocking the world. The Rockets have a winning record after they just stomped the Lakers, and of course the Astros didn't make the World Series, but they were in the American League Championship games. Our three main teams have done well.
It's incredible, John. You know, you bring up the Rockets, and they may come up again a little later in the show in Forreal or Fugazi. And we're going to get into our preview of the Bengals game shortly with the six-pack, and we will certainly get into this injury report. But as long as you brought up the Rockets, that win over the Lakers last night, they beat the Lakers by 34 points. Granted, a banged-up version of the Lakers, no Anthony Davis out there, but LeBron was out there. 34 points is 34 points. That's I don't care who's playing who. That's a blowout. It really is amazing the simultaneous sort of trajectory of the Rockets and the Texans. You know, just how similar the two sort of. And I'm going like this because it was here, and then it came down here, and then it went back up. But, I mean, James Harden and Deshaun Watson, John, requested trades within days of each other, like a few days of each other back in January of 2021. And other than, I mean, the big dissimilarity, obviously, is Deshaun Watson's legal saga. I mean, the Rockets didn't experience anything remotely close to that. But after that trade request, both franchises not only just slid into the toilet, but I think especially the Texans were just objects of ridicule within the sports world. And then almost simultaneously, the two organizations start to assemble some young talent. And I think the biggest thing, and maybe the biggest similarity, not that these two guys are totally similar people, but I think they're having a totally similar effect, is they got the coach right. Ime Udoka for the Rockets, D'Amico Ryans for the Texans. And now even up to this week, like the Texans get this huge win in Tampa, and now everybody's talking about them. The Rockets, they've won 4 in a row. They beat the Lakers by 34. And now my guess is on some of these NBA shows today, you know, people are talking about the Rockets again. It's really been uncanny how, meanwhile, the Astros have just been hovering over everybody else. But the similarity between the Rockets and the Texans are just, it's almost a little bit eerie to me, honestly.
Others laid the foundations for rebuilds from the ground floor up. And now Udoka and D'Amico Ryans are reaping the benefits. And they both, we know that C.J. Stroud's a franchise quarterback, and after watching that Lakers game, some of the plays Jalen Green made, I'm thinking his career is really going to take off. And Rockets have been stockpiling number one picks. Texans number one picks worked out well this year, but not last year, even though we expect Derek Stingley Jr. to come back. I don't know if it'll be this week he's practicing or it'll be next week, but it's amazing how they've done it. And I kind of feel bad for the coaches that preceded them, like Steven Silas, just experienced misery during 3 seasons. And now Ime Udoka is doing great so far.
Yeah, I do feel bad for Silas from this standpoint. I don't feel awful for Silas because that was a bad coaching job. Like, just like do a little better. But I will say this, like Silas was not brought in to coach a bunch of 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds. Like he was brought in. When he was brought in, Russell Westbrook and James Harden were still in the building. Hell, if you believe some of the stories, they were the ones who gave a stamp of approval for Steven Silas as their head coach. It's almost like Steven Silas thought he was getting hired to run like a sales team one day, and he walks in and he's a substitute teacher in a 4th grade class. You know, like, okay, this was not what I signed up for here.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So happy for both teams, though. Happy for both fan bases, to be sure. And I love seeing the symbiosis, the symbiotic nature of the, CJ's out there shooting free throws at the game, the first shot, which by the way, John, you and he are basically equals now. You
We
missed
clanked them.
You both, yeah. His went in and out. Yours did not go in and out, but you
All
did
I
hit the
know
rim.
is he missed it. He hit the rim, and I hit the rim.
That's right. Scoreboard,
And I
right?
had torn rotator cuff, and he doesn't.
As far as we know, let's hope
I
not.
think it was Titus Howard tweeted a picture of it, called him Shaquille O'Neal free throw.
Just saw that like 2 minutes ago. That's so funny. I told Seth today that they should just put a big pile of bricks in his locker when he gets there today. Like he gets there, just big stack.
I bet you they did do something for when
I
he
hope
got
so,
there.
and he'd have a good sense of humor about it, I think. So, well, let's get into this injury report because if we don't, it's as long as this thing is, John, we might need to take this podcast into Friday. This is the longest injury report I've ever seen for an NFL team. It's long enough that it got a headline on CBSSports.com today. Texans 23 of 53 on the injury reserve. I don't know if that's exactly right because Stingley and Charlie Heck are both on this injury report as participants. Stingley limited, Heck full participant, but I don't think either are officially back on the roster yet, if I'm not mistaken. They've had their window activated here for practice, right?
The thing that gets me on Charlie Heck, I was told the whole time he was out, it was his foot or his ankle, and now they say it's his back. And so I don't know if that's a new occurrence injury he had. And they don't really need a tackle. They need a guard. They need a guard so they can move Titus Howard back to right tackle. And right now, George Fant's playing better at right tackle than Titus Howard is at left guard. Titus has done a terrible job at left guard. And I'm stunned they haven't put somebody else out there, but I'm guessing they don't want Titus to go to right tackle and be a weak link over there for whatever reason. But Charlie Heck's going to come back, and it's too bad he can't play guard.
Like physically, I don't even think he's put together to play guard.
No,
you know what I
he's
mean?
not.
Like he's
6'8".
He's too tall and rangy. Yeah. So this injury report, and it's in the smallest font ever. John, I'm going to read the 11 names that didn't participate in practice yesterday, and then I'm going to follow up with a question to you. So here they are. And again, by the time some of you are listening to this, the Texans may very well be practicing or have practiced, and some of this may change, but it's still an alarming number of guys not participating on Wednesday. Will Anderson, Andrew Beck, Blake Cashman, Kaimi Fairbairn, Jake Hansen, Brevin Jordan, Steven Nelson, Damian Pierce, Laramie Tunsil, Jimmy Ward, and Robert Woods. Now, most of those names either were already injured, Brevin Jordan, Robert Woods, Damian Pierce. We knew that they were going to be not participating. Guys that got hurt in this past Sunday's game, like Jimmy Ward, Kaimi, Jake Hansen, probably missing one or two. The three names on this list, John, that were jarring to me to see were Will Anderson with a knee, Blake Cashman with a knee, Steven Nelson, back and neck. So I want your thoughts on those and, almost power rank these, like who do the, in order of, in order of needing the most to least, who do the Texans, how are we power ranking these injuries of those, specifically those three guys right now?
Will Anderson limped off at the end of the game, so the PR guys already left the press box. There was no way to make an announcement. Don't have any idea his situation. He was always durable at Alabama. He's been durable this season. He plays the run. He's in the middle of everything. And if he doesn't play, it means you got Jonathan Gennard, 47-year-old Jerry Hughes, and then Dylan Horton, a rookie, fourth-round pick who's getting a little more playing time each week. And you hope Sheldon Rankins is back at tackle. The one I want to see is Khalil Davis, the third or fourth tackle. Jimmy Ward's not going to play anytime soon. Kaimi Fairbairn, they're hoping maybe he'll miss a game or two. But those first guys that you mentioned, that's scary. Nico Collins, was he limited?
He was limited, yeah. I had seen reports he didn't practice, but he was listed as limited on the report yesterday.
Yeah, limited means sometimes they just go out there and run around, don't do squat.
Yeah, they put it as a calf.
They put that out there so the opponent will think maybe they're not going to play, which is a waste, of course. But if Will goes out, then they can double Jonathan Gennard all they want.
So Will Anderson, Blake Cashman, and Steven Nelson. Again, John, if you power rank those, like who are the most, like how do you rank those in terms of importance of having
Cashman too, because Cashman's their best linebacker, one of their best players. And I think he's graded now number 2 linebacker by Pro Football Focus.
Yeah.
And then Steven Nelson, he gave up a deep pass to Mike Evans. That happens to a lot, but he's been their best cornerback and one of their best defensive backs. And he's got to be able to run and cut and stop and start, come out of his back pedals. So if they don't have him, considering they're missing Jimmy Ward and they're one of their two top reserve safeties, Eric Murray was already out, and now MJ Stewart, they're taking volunteers off the street.
Yeah, I'd go Anderson. I would go Anderson, Nelson, Cashman in order of importance. Anderson the most. Now, because John, if Steven Nelson is out, I'm assuming Derek Stingley Jr. is not playing. That means Shaquille Griffin is your best cornerback going into a game where we don't know. We don't know if Cincinnati's going to have both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in this game. They're both on Cincinnati's injury report. Either way, Joe Burrow is the quarterback of that team. And I don't know if I want Shaquille Griffin as my top cornerback. I don't care who's playing receiver if Joe Burrow is the one pulling the trigger.
I'll be amazed if they activate Stingley after 1 week of practice, considering how much time he's missed, 6 games.
Yep. All right, John. So that's the injury report. Let's get into our pregame six-pack, John. 6 people, position groups, storylines, esoteric things that may affect the Cincinnati Bengals and the Houston Texans in Cincinnati, noon kick on Sunday on Sports Radio 610, if you want to listen to it. I'm anxious to get your prediction, John, for this game. But we'll get to the six-pack first. And you always go first, my friend. Fire away.
Of course, it would be C.J. Stroud, but I'll leave him to you. Dameon Pierce, everybody thought he's big part of the problem why they can't run the ball. And I think people now realize it isn't the running backs, it's the offensive line. So I'm going to say the offensive line, which did a really good job of pass protecting, has got to do a better job of run blocking against a defense that struggled against the run. The last time they went against a defense that struggled against the run 2 weeks ago at Carolina, they ran for 110 yards. Well, that's no big deal for most teams, but for the Texans, it was time to pop the champagne corks because they're one of the worst running teams I've ever seen. So many players get hit in the backfield. They had to have Xavier Hutchinson do an end around for 12 yards, and they had to have C.J. Stroud take a pitch from Singletary, which was not designed, and 10 yards. Stroud's had a double-digit run in each of the last 10 yards. So 22 yards were manufactured, and it's amazing that they were able to win the game against the Bucs with no running game whatsoever.
Zero.
You can't win consistently in the NFL if you can't run. But when it comes to run blocking, it's hard. It either can do it or they can't. They've had the line together now. They've got the stability. Michael Dieter did a really good job at center. I believe Pro Football Focus had him the highest rated offensive lineman they had. Titus Howard was the lowest. And so it's the offensive line has got to do better because you don't want to go 3 and out. You don't want 2nd and 9, 3rd and 8. And that's up to the line to try to kick some butt, control the clock a little bit. And on the other hand, they are going to have to throw the ball. I'm not so sure I wouldn't throw it on first down almost every time.
All right, John. My first one is the Texans. I'm going to call it the intermediate part of the pass defense. Call it the linebackers. They had another bad game last week against the tight end. Cade Otton had a huge game against them for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, including a touchdown that would have been the game-winning touchdown if C.J. Stroud didn't pull a rabbit out of his hat. Last week, Cincinnati's tight ends in their game against Buffalo had 10 receptions for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns on 13 targets.
Licking their chops.
The Texans are 31st in passer rating against tight ends this year so far, and they have just been diced up by quarterbacks a whole lot worse than Joe Burrow in that intermediate passing game. So that's a big one for me this week because, depending on what pieces are there, especially if Cashman is out. Cashman's been their best linebacker in coverage so far this year. So that's a big one for me is the Bengals might be missing some pieces on the outside, but they showed last week that they can work the tight end game as well. And the Texans have been really, really bad at defending tight ends this year. So that's my first one for the 6-pack.
And that's a great one. What do you know what team was actually worse than the Texans against tight ends?
I don't. I only saw that they were rated 31st. I don't know who's worse.
Imagine if there's a team out there worse than the Texans at containing tight ends.
Yep. It's
Wow.
it's pretty remarkable because the Texans are really, really bad at it. No doubt about that.
I am going to go with Stroud, the
Okay.
obvious one. He can't keep playing perfect games like this. If he only threw 2 touchdown passes, but he hasn't turned it over. It's just remarkable the way he played. All the national outlets are talking, ESPN, NFL Network, The Athletic. He's in the running for the MVP. And I don't know. To me, you're going to have to make the playoffs to be able to get the MVP, but it's still great that he's getting that kind of consideration. And with no running game, he's going to have to be precise. They got a good pass rush. And the Buccaneers, we talked about the pass protection that he received. And on that last drive, it was great, but he was forced out of the pocket a lot. And he had to make plays on the run. All those people that talked about his lack of mobility before the draft, that was ridiculous. He always been able to run. He just hadn't had to. And one of the things D'Amico Ryans talked about was his instincts when things break down. And I've got a column about he and Watson and comparing them in that situation off schedule when instincts take over. And he's been tremendous. I'm not for him taking pitches from Singletary, which they pulled out of their butt, but he still had a 10-yard and a 12-yard gain the last 2 weeks. If they could let him run on a boot with assurance that he's going to slide. And he talked about playing baseball. All athletes want to be baseball players, which I thought was weird. I thought they wanted to be basketball players. Make sure he knows how to slide and let him run a little bit on those bootlegs to loosen up the linebackers where they can't just put everybody in the box. But Stroud's going to have to play a perfect game for them to have a chance to upset the Bengals and end their 4-game winning streak.
I'm with you on that. I think the only way the Texans win this game if it's a shootout. If it looks a lot like last week's game, back and forth, Stroud versus Burrow, Stroud hero ball, and I think that's if they're going to win the game, that's probably the formula is to lean on C.J. Stroud. Along those lines, John, my item to watch here in the 6-pack, the Texans wide receiving core. Nico Collins is on the injury list, as you pointed out, but I'm anticipating he's going to play. Noah Brown has been great the last 2 weeks, really great last week. Tank Dell has been awesome all season long. 7 games into his career, he's got the second most receiving yardage of any rookie Texans receiver through 7 games, behind only Andre Johnson, which means he's ahead of DeAndre Hopkins on a list like that. So Tank Dell's been amazing. The Cincinnati secondary, they had to replace both their safeties this year because Jesse Bates and Von Bell both left in free agency, but their corners are really, really good. They hold wide receivers to a passer rating of just above 70, which is really, really solid secondary.
Yeah.
So this should be a fun matchup between, I'm not saying that I'm not giving out that passer rating in a way where I'm conceding that the Texans are going to have to find some other way to move the football. I'll give you a fact about the Texans, John. Let me get my my little notebook where I wrote this down here, my little green notebook, because this is handwritten research that I did yesterday on Pro Football Focus. And I get it that Pro Football Focus isn't always exact. It's very subjective in terms of the scores and things like that. But the Texans are the only team. The Texans are the only team in the NFL with 3 receivers in the top 26 among all the receivers in the NFL. There's, I think, 110 receivers that have played enough snaps to get Pro Football Focus rated. And Nico Collins is 9th, Noah Brown is 18th, and Tank Dell is 26th. They're the only team with 3 in the top 26. The next team to get to 3 receivers on the list is Seattle, and they have 3 in the top 33. And you think about Seattle's receiving core, that's DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. That's considered an elite core. So the wide receiving core of the Texans isn't just overachieving above what people expected them to achieve. They are achieving amongst the best wide receiving cores in the NFL so far this year.
Let's give a shout out to the McDaniels, who is not getting criticized coast to coast. Josh McDaniels got fired. They're smoking champagnes. His brother Ben is doing an outstanding job coaching the Texans receivers. He's also a passing game coordinator. Ben is doing a tremendous job. And I always thought it's funny. Josh McDaniels has been head coach twice. He's not hired Ben. Maybe Ben turned him down, knowing what was in store. But he's done a terrific job because at the start of the season, we all locally and nationally, man, they need better receivers. Their top pick should be a go-to receiver next season. And I'm not saying it still won't be because they're going to have to pay some money. And but you're right; those guys have gone above and beyond, and everybody's going crazy over Stroud, and they should this week. But he was coming off a 140-yard game, and Dalton Schultz was coming off 2 catches for 5 yards. So they just exploded in the second half against the Buccaneers, who had a good defense. And on paper, Tampa Bay's defense was good as Cincinnati's, different. And Baker Mayfield played great. It's hard to imagine Joe Burrow playing any better than Mayfield did. They couldn't blame that one on him. So I'm not. This is the worst weekend, Sean, I've ever seen for primetime games, not to mention the game from Germany, that they didn't flex the Texans and Stroud while he's hot with Joe Burrow and the Bengals while they're hot, and put a game out there with 2 former Ohio State quarterbacks.
But John, that's a decision they would have had to make 2 weeks ago. You know, these flex decisions get made at a time where the Texans probably had just lost to the Carolina Panthers. You know,
you're right.
Yeah. So
of course they didn't do it now. What they should do, look at that schedule when they play Jacksonville after Arizona, and because there's a good chance they'll be 5-5 at that one, and maybe flex that game and see if the Texans can sweep that season series, because it's going to have big implications.
Huge. And the Jags are underdogs this weekend against San Francisco. The Texans can pull off the upset. There's a chance to get within a game here. And if they're within a game of Jacksonville in week 12, when Jacksonville comes to Houston, then Texans win that game. They've got the tiebreaker over the Jags. They're 2-0 against them this year.
It's just too bad when the Cardinals get here, it won't be Clayton Tune. It'll be Kevin Murray. Next one's going to be Matt Amendola, the kicker. Okay. He's had a cup of coffee here before. He's bounced around. He's okay. And he's not as good as Kami Fairbairn, who's only missed 1 field goal this year. But if the Texans have a chance to shock the world and pull off an upset, chances are it's going to come down to the end, and it could be a field goal. And so he is going to be essential, I think, for the Texans to come close or to beat the Bengals.
Yeah, I know that if Matt Amendola matters in this game, then this has been a successful Sunday for the Texans.
Absolutely.
Right? If he matters in this game. By the way, credit our producer, James Jackson, who just told us in the chat that Baltimore is currently last in defending tight ends. That's a little surprising.
Well, I wouldn't have guessed them.
I would not have either. I would have gone way down the list. Baltimore's a good defense, but they're just not good at defending.
Arizona.
This feels like one of those things. You know what it feels like, John? It feels like one of those things where Baltimore's so good at defending everything else that these teams they just have to use their tight ends. They have no other choice, that kind of thing. So Matt Amendola. John, my last one is not a person. It's really just pointing out an aspect of this game that I think might help the Texans out. Now, on the one hand, you could go, wow, that was an emotionally kind of draining game for the Texans, the way they won against Tampa Bay. But I don't get the sense in observing this team operate this week and knowing DeMeco Ryans and kind of how he's, how even-keeled he is and how he's able to, I think, kind of block out the noise. I'm not expecting any sort of letdown from the Texans because they won such an emotional game last week, with that comeback at the end. I do wonder with Cincinnati, for people who aren't aware, Cincinnati's previous 2 games, 2 weeks ago, they played San Francisco, one of the best teams in the league at the time, and they won. And then last week they beat Buffalo. But the Buffalo is, again, these are 2 teams, San Francisco and Buffalo, that are considered contenders. Now they play the Texans. The next 2 weeks they play Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I think at Baltimore next week. So 2 division games coming up. So I'm only pointing that out to say that if you were handicapping this game, like from a gambling standpoint, this is almost an ideal juncture in the schedule. Other than the Texans maybe calling too much attention to themselves by the way they won that Tampa Bay game, like that probably woke up a lot of people about the Texans. So there's no chance for them to just kind of lay low and get ignored entirely. But human nature is such that, boy, has a big win over the Bills on national TV on Sunday Night Football last week. And now you got Baltimore, who's, I think a lot of people consider the best team in the NFL next week. If you're the Texans and you're picking a spot on the schedule to put this game, probably the only one better would be to put it after the Ravens game, before the Steelers game, in between 2 rough and rugged, high-profile division games. So this is a pretty ideal spot on the schedule for the Texans if they're going to pull off an upset.
Or put it in Houston.
Yeah. So
Wouldn't that be fun? This is the last game that they have against a team that is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I don't consider the Jaguars a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I put them right behind the top 3 in the AFC. But man, oh man, Cincinnati winning at the 49ers, that was impressive.
Yeah, very much so. What do you consider Cleveland at this point, John? I'm just curious.
They're just, with Watson being in and out of the lineup, they got a great defense, of course.
Yep.
Best in the NFL right now. But I don't see Watson as being consistent enough or healthy enough to put them up there with Baltimore and Kansas City and Cincinnati.
Okay, I'm with you on that. All right, so John, what's the prediction?
I'm predicting the Bengals win 30-23.
Okay, I got 30-27. I think it's going to be a lot like last week's game. I think CJ is going to hang in there, and so you and I are kind of on the same page there. Then 30-23. So you got them covering though, because last I checked, the spread is 6.5. So you got them covering the number right now.
3 points.
The Bengals, that is.
Matt Amendola misses a field goal. It could have tied, forced overtime.
God, I hope that doesn't happen. Yeah, right now the Bengals. Well, the spread is up to 7 now. So the Bengals favored by a full touchdown now over the Texans. So that's right where you got it, 30-23. There you go. John, you ready to do? And I mentioned 30-27. Okay. I've got some Forreal or Fugazis. You want to do them here?
Always.
Okay. So we do this every Thursday episode. There's a way to kind of just poke our heads in on some of the other topics floating around football and sports. Forreal or Fugazi. I read a sentence to John. He assesses it quickly and says, if he agrees with it, he says for real. If he thinks my sentence is silly, stupid, false, counterfeit, he says
Fugazi,
which is Italian for counterfeit or fake. All right, John, well, let's do this one here. CJ Stroud has been getting mentioned from some people that he could get into the MVP race here. Now, the MVP, as you know, it used to be just writers like yourself would just vote for one guy, and that was the entire voting. They do it more like baseball now, where I believe it's 1 through 5 they vote for in the MVP balloting.
Correct.
For real or Fugazi, CJ Stroud will at least get some MVP votes at the end of the year.
Fugazi, I don't think the Texans will finish good enough because you're talking about 2 receivers and you're talking about a bunch of quarterbacks who are really good. But the fact that he's even being talked about it, that's good. And
you don't think
even if they don't make the playoffs, but people are going to be so fired up about next season. And but I just don't see it now when I look at the guys who are running the best teams in the league.
You don't think a couple people will get cute and give him a 5th place vote here and there?
Well, I don't think the Texans are going to be in the playoffs.
Okay, gotcha. All right, next one, Thursday Night Football tonight. It's Carolina in Chicago. Clash of the Titans. For real or Fugazi, both these head coaches are dead men walking tonight.
Oh, boy. I'm going to say that's for real because David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, they say he's not happy at all with Frank Reich. It looks like that Reich's play calling duties were taken away from him and given to Thomas Brown because we were very suspect of that move right before they played the Texans, and that worked out okay. And then Bryce Young threw 2 pick sixes. And it's so interesting to compare the 2 staffs. They hired Jim Caldwell, Dom Capers. They get all these former head coaches on their staff. Josh McCown is the quarterback coach, where DeMeco has no former head coaches on his staff. And yet the Texans are so much better, and Stroud is so much better. Matt Eberflus, I was listening to, I guess, I can't remember what I was. Whether one of Skip Bayless is on, because I want to hear Michael Irvin and Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson claims that Justin Fields is better than any quarterback prospect in this draft. No, he's got to be the only person on the planet that would say that.
Keyshawn's a moron sometimes.
And so this game is a can't lose for Chicago. They win and they have the Panthers' first pick. They lose, they got their first pick. And so I can't imagine they're going to bring back Matt Eberflus, although one of the big guys from the Athletic, he thinks Eberflus will be back. I don't think how you can say that right now, but I'd be shocked if they bring back Justin Fields And if they don't take one of the top 2 quarterbacks, and then they're going to go out, and you always go from defense to offense, vice versa, and Eberflus is gone. There's just no way they can bring him back.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so either. All right, let's keep it moving, John. The Chiefs, of course, just got done playing in Germany, so they're back stateside again, but they are on a bye week now, post-Germany. So now Travis Kelce's jumping on a plane. He's heading to Argentina to go watch his girlfriend, Taylor Swift, in concert. Forreal or Fugazi. John, if you were the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, you'd be totally cool with Travis Kelce just toddling off to Argentina this weekend.
Absolutely. It's a bye week, and Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the NFL, and if he wants to go down there and hang out with Taylor Swift, the key is he needs to kidnap her and bring her back, because the Chiefs don't do as well, and Kelce doesn't do as well when she's not at their games. But now she's got that Eras tour going all over the world, so it's the last time he's going to see her on the road, because he's not going to have any more time till after maybe the Super Bowl.
All right. Along those lines, John, as long as we're talking about South America, we've got another Germany game coming up this weekend. So we've got England games, we got Germany games. We know the NFL wants to keep expanding its global brand. Forreal or Fugazi, the next place the NFL will go to export football games is South America.
I think that's for real. They're talking about they want to go to Brazil, play in one of the big soccer stadiums down there. They want to go to Paris. And there's a lot of places in Europe they want to go. They talked about going to China, specifically Hong Kong, when the Oilers were still here. And I was begging them put the Oilers and the Cowboys in that game, because I told them, hey, the Oilers are a big draw on the road. They sold out the Tokyo Dome. They sold out Estadio Azteca, sold out the Sun Bowl, all in preseason games back then. And of course, they played the Cowboys in all those games, but that didn't have anything to do with it. It was Pistoleros y Vaqueros.
There you go. All right, 2 more, John, both Houston related. The Dana Brown at the GM meetings did several interviews with several different people. By the way, did you see they had to clear out the GM meetings because everybody got a case of the runs? It sounds like
some virus.
See that.
Yeah. Boy, that's not a good look for the hotel.
No, it's not at all. Not at all. I won't name the hotel on here. You can go find it in the article. Yeah, not good. But Dana Brown was asked several different times what needs are for the Astros, and he mentioned a backup catcher to Yainer Diaz. Obviously, they're going to need bullpen help with several of their bullpen arms leaving. He even mentioned that he would look at a starting pitcher. Never once mentions anything about the outfield. John, Forreal or Fugazi, the outfield the Astros have right now, totally cool to roll into 2024 with them.
I got no problem with it. Alvarez in left, McCormick in center, Tucker in right with Dubon able to play center. Don't know what they think about Jake Myers. I'd rather see them get a starting pitcher. Now, Scott Boras has assured us Lance McCullers is going to pitch. Yeah, right. We don't know that. We don't know if Lance will ever pitch again. Luis Garcia may not be ready till the end of the year. They need another starter.
Yeah, I mean, they've got arms, but who can you rely on? That's the thing. Because all the guys that were in the rotation going into the playoffs last year are all still on the team. They didn't lose anybody, but it's so different. You're right, John. It's so different this year coming into the season. And that's with Verlander. Like, we were coming in last season without Verlander. You're like, not you, but like people like, well, they'll be fine. I mean, look, Frommer was a top 5 Cy Young. Javier's throwing no hitters. They've got Urquidy. They've got Garcia. Lance is healthy again. All those things. Hunter Brown. We got 6 guys. What Verlander? And now you're actually coming into a season with Verlander, and people are like, they need starters. And it's like, well, all those same guys you just named are still on the team. Yeah, I know, but they sucked last year.
They sure did, and it's amazing they got as far as they did.
Yeah,
and could have gone to the World Series. They won one of the last 2 at home, considering the issues they had with their pitching staff. Did you see, and I'm amazed by this, Chandler Rome for The Athletic, who worked for the Chronicle, did a story from the general manager's meetings quoting Dana Brown as saying Joe Espada cannot interview with anybody till we give him permission because he's under contract. And, there's stories Milwaukee's interested in him. And then Chandler goes in there and goes, well, according to sources, his contract expired on Halloween. He can interview with anybody he wanted.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's not a good look if the general manager doesn't know his leading candidate's contract's expired.
No, that's scary, John, is what that is. If I'm an Astros fan, that's terrifying to me.
Yes.
All right. Last one. Rockets beat the Lakers last night, 128-94. They smoked them. Forreal or Fugazi, the Rockets will finish ahead of the Los Angeles Lakers in the standings this year.
Fugazi. I'm guessing Anthony Davis will come back and play well. LeBron only scored 18. He made the playoffs last year after LeBron complained about the new rule. Then they took advantage of it to get in the playoffs. And we forget sometimes the Rockets were the worst team in the NBA. So if they could even come close to the Lakers, it would be substantial improvement that they've shown so far. Now they got to do it on the road.
All right, there you go. All right, that's Forreal or Fugazi. We do it every Thursday episode. John's picking the Bengals. I'm picking the Bengals. John 30-23, me 30-27, and we both hope that we are wrong, very, very wrong on that prediction. But does not, even if they lose this game, John, the Texans, I don't think it dampers what the spirit going on right now. Especially when you got Arizona coming to town. I looked at it. I heard Landry Locker talking about it on In the Loop, and I like the way he looked at it, which is, if they lose this game, they lose this game, but he said, I'm looking at it more like after the Arizona game, are they 5-5? If they're 5-5 after the Arizona game with the schedule they got in front of them after that, with the Jacksonville game, which is a huge opportunity, and then you got a bunch of quarterbacks that I would gladly line up against and play, assuming the Texans get a little bit healthier than they are right now. I think bottom line is I think they're in really good shape. I think even with the long injury report, they're in such better shape now than anybody expected them to be coming into the season.
I picked them to win 6 games, and they're 2 away, and I feel confident they're going to win more than that. So if you told me before the season they got a chance to be 5-5, I just said, hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Amen and hallelujah. Absolutely. John, what do you got going on sportsradio610.com?
I have a column that be posted in a few minutes comparing Stroud's start with Deshaun Watson's start in 2017, and I've got everything I'm writing is about Stroud because he's so hot. He can't go wrong. And I'll have 5 things to watch in the game Friday. And thank you very much, as always, Sean.
All right, good stuff, John. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you on the pregame show on Sunday at 11:15 on Sports Radio 610.
I'll have an up-to-date weather report, and I'll tell you what it's like in downtown Cincinnati before that game. So everybody listening to the pregame show will know.
Appreciate that, John, very, very much. And we will get together on Sunday night to recap the Texans and the Bengals. Big thanks to our producer, James Jackson, who gets the podcast out to all of you guys. Does a great job with that. If you guys want to click the subscribe button, that makes it easier on everybody. That means you get the podcast automatically wherever it is you listen to your podcast. Please subscribe. We appreciate you doing that. And tell a friend, especially if they're a Texans fan, if they're missing out on this podcast, we don't want them to do that anymore. We would love to have them be part of the Houtopia family. HOUmailbag@gmail.com. That's the email address to send John and I questions for our Tuesday mailbag episode. HOUmailbag@gmail.com. We answer as many questions as we can for the mailbag. So go ahead and send us those questions. So for James Jackson, John McClain, I'm Sean Pendergast. We are out of time. We will see all of you Sunday night following the Texans and the Bengals here on the Houtopia Football Podcast. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.